Yesterday, I said that I bet my house that the DOJ is not going to bring criminal charges against Donald Trump. I still have my house. Countdown, as I said, maybe you don't want it because not very far from my house, you're going to find streets where either side are lined up with people living in their SUVs, living in their vans. It is clearly that they are homeless because the vans are dirty, shades are drawn. They've been there a very, very long period of time. So maybe you don't want my house. Now, the ratings for the second hearings have nosedived. They've nosedived. They've gone from 20 million people watching the first one to 11 million people watching the second one. You know what they should do? They should goose it up. They should have a halftime show. Maybe Janet Jackson will do another wardrobe reveal. Now, we mentioned yesterday that Bennie Thompson, I started to say Cedric Richmond. I'll talk about him later on. They're interchangeable. Bennie Thompson is the chairman of the Senate Committee on January 6th. And he said, it's not our job to make a criminal recommendation or referral to the DOJ. Our job is just to investigate what happened and to make maybe recommendations as to what kind of laws we can pass. Liz Cheney, the anti-Trump Republican on the committee, said, no, we can make recommendations. We absolutely can make recommendations. But you know who said that no one's going to make any recommendations? Alan Dershowitz. Watch this.
Obviously, it's like the Boston Celtics going to play the Warriors, and the NBA says only the Celtics can go on the field, not the Warriors. One team on the field, not the other team. Nobody should pay attention to the conclusions of this kangaroo committee. Of course, a committee can make a recommendation. So can you make a recommendation to?
Of course the committee can make a recommendation. You can make a recommendation. You can make a recommendation. We all can make a recommendation. You know why Bennie Thompson said that? They know they ain't got the goods. As I said yesterday, a first-year law student know they've got nothing. And you don't need Johnny Cochran for this one. You don't need my cousin Vinny for this one.
Congress, but to the Justice Department. The Justice Department won't follow it. The president committed no crimes. His speech was constitutionally protected, ill-advised, to be sure, but constitutionally protected. I put it in the same category as Chuck Schumer's speech, both ill-advised, both constitutionally protected.
I put it in the same category of Chuck Schumer's speech, where he got into front of the Supreme Court. I'm warning you, Gorsuch. I'm warning you, Kavanaugh. You will reap the whirlwind, whatever that meant. Or the same category as Maxine Waters. I want you to get into the faces of Donald Trump cabinet members when you see them. Let them know they're not welcome anywhere anymore. Ill-advised, he said, but also protected by what's called the First Amendment of the Constitution. Now, guess what's just happened? They had the first hearing, as I mentioned. 20 million people saw it, although they kept talking about 20 million, 20 million, 20 million, as if that's a big number. If you look at ABC, NBC, CBS nightly newscasts, average night, 20 million people watch. And it's not in prime time. The first hearings were in prime time. ABC, NBC, CBS, 4.5 million people, substantially lower than what they normally get at the same time of programming during that period of time. And now for the second hearing, the ratings declined by 50%. Now all of a sudden, they postponed the third one. Pourquoi? Is it because the ratings went down? Or is it because you have a set to between Bennie Thompson and Liz Cheney as to whether or not the committee is going to make a criminal referral to the DOJ? Clearly, Liz Cheney believes the evidence is sufficient for that. Adam Schiff does. Chucky Schumer does. But the chairman does not. It's going to blow up in their faces if they were to do it. So all of a sudden, the thing was postponed. Now, one of them said, it's technical issues, overwhelming demand to staff to produce videos. Another one said, the time has always been fluid. You didn't say it was fluid before. You laid out, I think it was 7 hearings, when you were going to have them, what you were going to talk about. Now, all of a sudden, well, because there's so much demand on our staffers to produce videos, it's always been fluid. You didn't say that before. Something is going on. And what that something is, people are not watching. The only ones who are watching are the ones who already hate Donald Trump. But the idea was to persuade the rest of the country that Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection, persuade those who are Republicans and others in the independents. It's not working. So all of a sudden they postponed it. Now, when former AG Barr was asked about Dinesh D'Souza's documentary 2,000 Mules, this is what he said.
The election was not stolen by fraud. And I haven't seen anything since the election that changes my mind on that, including the 2,000 Mules movie.
Well, maybe you can assess that 2,000 Mules, and people are talking about that.
Well, I mean, just in a nutshell, I just think that the GBI was unimpressed with it, and I was similarly unimpressed with it because I think I was holding my fire on that to see what the photographic evidence was, because I thought, well, hell, if they have a lot of photographs of the same person dumping a lot of ballots in different boxes, that's hard to explain. So I wanted to see what the photographic evidence was. But the cell phone data is singularly unimpressive. I mean, basically, if you take 2 million cell phones and figure out where they are physically in a big city like Atlanta or wherever, just by definition, you're going to find many hundreds of them have passed by and spent time in the vicinity of these boxes. And the premise that, if you go by a box, 5 boxes or whatever it was, that's a mule is just indefensible.
Did we watch the same documentary, 2,000 Mules? For those of you who haven't seen it, they followed only people that went to 10 or more drop boxes within a certain period of time in cities like Atlanta and Philadelphia and Cleveland, where there were a whole lot of Democrat votes, particularly black Democrat votes. And a mule is somebody who's been paid to take these ballots and stuff these drop boxes full of them. They only went to people that went to 10 or more, not 8 or more, or 9 or more, or 7 or more, only those that went to 10 or more. So a whole bunch of mules were excluded. He tried to find the most egregious mules. Now you tell me what somebody is doing at 3 o'clock in the morning with stacks of ballots, wearing latex gloves, and taking photographs after he puts the ballots in there to make sure that it documents that he put them in there, presumably so he can get paid. You explain to me why somebody would be doing that. Now, in response, guess what Dinesh D'Souza has done? He's challenged former AG William Barr to a debate. In a tweet, he said, quote, "I'd like to invite Bill Barr to a public debate. Given the blithe, chuckling dismissal of 2,000 Mules, it should be easy for him. What do you say, Barr? Do you dare back up your belly laughs with arguments that can withstand rebuttal and cross-examination?" He also tweeted this: "The level of ignorance displayed by Bill Barr here is truly stunning. He doesn't seem to understand the very concept of geo-tracking. I'll address this in detail," he said, "on my podcast tomorrow," which would be today. Let's hope that Mr. Barr takes up Dinesh D'Souza's challenge. I'll tell you what, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, hee-haw, put that on prime time. That'll get you some ratings. I'd watch that. And I want to reiterate what I've said from the very beginning. I want to make a deal to all of you who are independents and sane Democrats, and I know you like my show because you believe I'm fair, even though you don't tell anybody you do it. I'm one of those delicious habits that you don't talk about. I understand. I make a deal with you. I will watch all of these hearings. So far, I've watched them, the 2 of them. If you promise to me you'll watch 2,000 Mules and react, do we have a deal? Now we come back, we're going to talk about Bidenflation. Don't go away. Fear of out-of-control inflation is hammering the stock market. The S&P 500 having its worst start of the year since World War II. So not only are your savings worth less, you now have less of it. Now might be a good time for you to diversify into gold, the most stable asset in the history of the world. And Birch Gold is a company I trust to help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold and silver. That's right. Not only will Birch Gold help you to fortify your savings with precious metals, they'll also help you do it in a tax-sheltered account. Go to larryforgold.com to get a free zero-obligation info kit on holding gold in a tax-sheltered account. Amazon stock down 37% in the first half of the year. Tesla down 40%. Cryptos have been slammed, and many fear the hawkish moves by the Fed to raise interest rates could stall the economy. What's your plan? Go to LarryForGold.com and get your free, no-obligation info kit on gold from Birch Gold. They are the precious metal pros. I trust them enough to buy from them. So go to LarryForGold.com and secure your savings right now. Now, Biden has blamed inflation on greed. He's blamed it on COVID. He, of course, has blamed it on Putin. He's blamed it on these dastardly Republicans for not passing Build Back Better. And, of course, he's blamed it on President number 45. Even CBS News talks about the average price of a gas hitting a record $5 a gallon. By the way, here in California, it's $7. Watch this.
The cost of oil is more than $120 a barrel, resulting in record high gas prices. Americans now pay an average of $5.02 a gallon for gas. That's more than $2 higher than the same time last year.
Now, when have you heard the words Biden and genius used in the same sentence? I give you Representative Sheila Jackson Lee.
Food prices and other commodities that are needed by Americans are driven by transportation costs, are driven by fuel costs, and that's where we are. This would have happened if any other president would have been in place. We went through a horrific pandemic. The president was a genius in putting forth the American Rescue.
Did she say the president was a genius in putting forth the American Rescue Plan? Yes, she did.
Plan that saved people from absolute despair and disgrace, if you will. When I say disgrace, thrown out on the streets, no food for their children. Here we are in a situation where inflation is unacceptable. We realize that.
So Joe Biden was a genius in putting forth the American Rescue Plan, a genius in putting forth Build Back Better. Was Sheila Jackson Lee awake yesterday when on the Morning Joe show, the former economic advisor to Barack Obama, Steve Ratner, said, had Biden gotten his way and Build Back Better with the $6 trillion price tag been passed, things would have been a lot worse. Watch this.
Spending. This is exactly what happens. And my God, I just wonder what would have happened if progressives had gotten their $6 trillion wish earlier this year.
Yeah, in an ironic way, you almost have to thank Joe Manchin for blocking that, because $6.5 trillion of spending in this economy would make these numbers look small. Yeah, look, we had a huge budget deficit. We had an unbelievably aggressive reaction by the Fed to the pandemic. You can kind of understand why they were trying, but they just tried too hard. And now we're all going to pay the consequences in a very, very tough environment over the next year or two while this gets sorted out.
So, had Build Back Better gone through, things would have been a whole lot worse. What does Sheila Jackson Lee say? Well, he was a genius proposing all of this. Now, keep in mind that Biden was a junior member of the Obama-Biden team. And when Obama came in, he proposed all sorts of spending. Later on, it was called Obamacare. And he was warned. And I was one of those who warned him. And the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank in Washington, D.C., put together a full-page ad in the Washington Post, New York Times. Ultimately, hundreds of economists signed on, including several Nobel laureates, and said, Mr. New President Obama, do not do this. He didn't listen. And Obama presided over the worst economic recovery since 1949. By the way, don't forget, before we do 20 minutes after, you need to go over to Epic Times TV to continue watching the live show. And you can always call in and leave a message. 888-971-7243, 888-971-7243. Watch the profanity and make sure you leave the message under 59 seconds. Here is the montage that the Cato Institute put together of economic advisors and other conservative pundits advising Obama, Biden not to tax, not to spend, not to regulate. They didn't listen.
Well, you're blaming that on Republicans, but Democrats controlled the Senate, and it was two Democrats, Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona and Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who who actually blocked that. Yes, the Republicans are not participating or cooperating.
No, I want the one where the hundreds of economists signed on to the Cato Institute ad. That's the one that I want. And Joe Biden was a member of the administration at the time, and these hundreds of economists advised Obama, Biden not to do tax, spend, regulate. Watch this.
Look, we can do all this. All I'm asking is for the largest corporations and the wealthiest Americans to begin to pay their fair share.
Okay, guys, the one I want is opposing stimulus. Hundreds of economists sign onto Cato Institute ad. That's the one. It's a 3 minute long. The one next. Yeah, that's the one I want. Hit that.
There's no disagreement that we need action by our government, a recovery plan that will help to jumpstart the economy.
That is not the settled opinion by a long shot. The Cato Institute put 200 economists on the full-page ad in the New York Times denouncing that.
The Cato Institute.
The Cato Institute, famous for being a libertarian think tank here in Washington.
The Cato Institute, a nonprofit public policy research foundation, brought an ad in today's New York Times.
250 other economists who signed on this week to this ad in the New York Times and Washington Post.
Took out a full-page ad in the New York Times.
There was a full-page ad taken out by the Cato Institute.
They've taken out a full-page ad in some major newspapers, in the Washington Post, in the New York Times, and Roll Call magazine.
Cato Institute, libertarian research group. Not a big surprise, but they don't think government does things well, obviously.
Full-page ad today in the Washington Post. 315 leading economists. Government spending is not the way to improve economic performance. Lower tax rates and a reduction of the burden of government are the best ways of using fiscal policy to boost growth.
What is it about the president's stimulus plan that you don't like?
The basic fact is that I don't think it's going to stimulate anything. The problem with our economy is not that we're not borrowing and spending enough, and we need the government to do some more of that for us.
The fact is that both the government and consumers have been living beyond their means for some time now.
This is a problem that was caused by spending and borrowing, and by engaging in more spending and borrowing, you're not going to solve it.
A lot of bad government policies got us into this mess, and we don't have a magic wand that's just going to get us out right away.
Even without a stimulus package, we've already got about $1 trillion deficit this year, an absolutely unprecedented number.
$1 trillion is a terrible thing to waste.
They're pushing costs onto people in the future. And so this is not just an economics question. There's a real ethical or moral question here.
When you borrow from Peter to pay Paul, you've got to pay Peter some interest.
Government just doesn't work very well. We tried big spending under Bush, it didn't work. We tried big spending under Hoover, it didn't work.
One of the points made is that more government spending by Hoover and Roosevelt did not pull the U.S. economy out of the Great Depression in the 1930s, and it also didn't solve Japan's, quote, lost decade in the 1990s.
The New Deal failed. It prolonged the Depression. It deepened the Depression.
What'd you think about that mustache?
Bigger spending and more intervention was a recipe for economic growth, then France should be an economic tiger and Hong Kong should be in the toilet. But instead, it's the other way around.
I urge the president to call a meeting with leading economists such as these and get their views on what might work.
The thing to do now is to cut taxes and reduce the size of government, not expand the size of government, which is what Obama and the Democrats want to do.
What's ironic is that Obama promised to bring change, and yet he's giving us the same big spending interventionist approach as Bush.
Government is the #1 growth industry. When you're spending other people's money, it's easy to grow, but you're growing at the expense of economic freedom and personal freedom.
This is just basically wasting money.
Milton Friedman, the Nobel laureate, said there are 4 ways of spending from the most efficient to the least efficient. The most efficient is when you're spending your money on yourself. You know exactly what you want, know exactly how much you want to spend. The other is when you're spending money on somebody else, is when you're buying a gift for somebody you care about. The other is when somebody's spending their money on you, as when you have a expense account with your boss. You can't go crazy, otherwise you get fired. The least efficient, most wasteful way of spending is somebody else's money on somebody else. And that's exactly what Obama did, and Joe Biden has done on steroids. Now, when we come back, bottom of the hour, we're going to talk to a former ambassador about the growing affection on the part of young people for socialism and what's going on over at CNN. Remember when Don Lemon questioned Joe Biden's mental fitness? There are a couple of other ones, too, that apparently are now waking up. So all of that and more. Don't forget, switch over to epictimes.com. Don't go away. People have been asking me, what have you been doing with your life since the election? Well, the truth is I've been enjoying life, riding my bike around town.
Oh, they're not wearing a mask.
I've taken up a little bit of fishing as well.
Elder kills innocent fish.
And I've been posting on social media. Oh, come on. Listen, if you're tired of the censorship as I am, I've actually got some great news for you. Check out epictv.com. It's a brand new censorship-free video platform where you'll find not only my show, but other deep documentaries, great content, and honest movies that bring you the news without all the spin and the false narratives. So, check out epictv.com. I'll see you there.